Morning, everyone. We are about to start our monthly webinar series. I hope you guys can see my screen. I'm sharing my screen. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes before we can start our webinar. All right, morning, everyone. This is our monthly webinar series for the month of Feb. We are going to talk about hiring restaurant staff, how we can find the right staff for your restaurant, and how to basically make sure that you can hire them, you can train them, and you can retain them and kind of groom them also to grow along with your restaurant. So we're going to start in another couple more minutes. Um, Again, hopefully we'll have a few more people joining the webinar. As always, this webinar series would be available for all anyone who wants to view it at a later stage in our YouTube channel. All right. A little bit about MConnect. We started the company in 2015, and our main focus has been on getting customer data with regards to restaurant marketing, where we use this data to kind of focus on customer journey and come up with marketing strategies. And we have developed a suite of applications that manage the transitions and the engagement between the brands, restaurant brands, and customers. And we call this as an A2A customer engagement model, where we identify a customer's interacting with the brand, go through these phases, these 5 phases: awareness, engagement, acquisition, loyalty, and advocacy. And across these 5 stages, at each stage, the customer, when they're interacting with the brand, the customers will actually provide some snippets of information about themselves, which our platform will be able to collect and use this data to kind of come up with personalization, data-driven models, and all those kind of fun stuff. And that's what we've been doing with most of our clients. So it's a software platform that can be used across a single unit or multiple locations. Um, so, having given a brief background, this is what we're going to talk about in today's webinar, where we're going to talk about like um, the staff in terms of the challenges that are being faced, how to find the right staff, which all channels you have to look around, what should be the process around finding the right staff, and how you can actually make sure that you can retain them and groom them, so that as your restaurant is growing in terms of revenues, in terms of locations, you can retain the right staff, so that they can actually help you as a restaurant owner or a general manager or a franchisee to kind of grow with you. Right. So that's what we're going to actually talk about. And if you have any specific questions during this, please feel free to ask us using the chat window, or you can also send us an email at marketing@mconnect.com. So without any further ado, we'll be talking about the challenge again. The agenda is around restaurant staff. What we have seen over the past 1 year due to the COVID situation was obviously, which we have never seen, at least within the restaurant industry, was the lack of right resources, and we have seen many complaints with regards to from our clients, where when they try to recruit the right staff, they either would not get the right people apply. Even if they get the right people apply, they would not know whether this person would be coming in and joining till the day. And even if they join within a week, they basically quit and try to get like unemployment benefits and so on and so forth. So anecdotally, we have seen a lot of challenges when it comes to hiring staff for restaurants, and there are multiple reasons for this, right? If you look at it again, the attrition rate within the industry is very high, given the physical nature of the work that is involved, given the kind of people that are being hired. Again, we are talking about generic across the board, in terms of where most of the staff that are actually hired are part-time, or more they're trying to fill in gaps and all those kind of things. So there are, like, as an industry, the restaurant industry faces a lot of challenges when it comes to hiring, in terms of because of the nature of the work and because of the nature of the workforce itself. As you can see, it is more to do with the seasonal staffing, in the sense that, like, let's assume during the holiday season, November, October, November, December time frame, where you want to hire more people, excuse me, where you want to hire more people, you also see the same um, staff being quoted by the retail industry to fulfill their needs for the retail industry. So that's another thing. And apart from that, it's also that, like, you want to hire more people during the weekends or during the nights, or during these time frame, or maybe during delivery times, if you want to hire more delivery drivers during snowstorms. So given the seasonality of the staffing needs, it's another challenge that the restaurants face, and that's one of the reasons why the third-party delivery companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats, and they actually have grown, because if you look at it, hiring a delivery driver as an employee is cost prohibitive, and where you would not know whether you would actually get enough orders for the day, and if there's a snowstorm or something like that, whether that particular driver will come or not, and legal issues, financial issues, and all those kind of things. So, given the nature of the business itself, this is another factor or another issue that most of the restaurants face, in terms of the from a staffing needs perspective, in terms of the seasonality itself. And then the third thing is specifically, again, as we talked about, right? It's the nature of the workforce itself, in the sense that it's all Gen Z population, where we actually have where we actually have these students who wants to fill in their schedules, or part-timers who are, like, trying to find a second or a third job to augment their salary requirements or their cash flow. So given all these things, the nature of the workforce itself makes it more transient, and that's one of the factors which leads to the high attrition rate. It's not as if, like, where it's not an office job or something where you can expect some level of responsibility slash accountability on part of the workforce itself. Not saying that it's not there, but the very nature itself is creates that you as a restaurant owner or a manager have to have some kind of buffer in terms of having these workforce or trying to like augment your workforce as well. So that's another challenge in the sense that like apart from the seasonality, the composition of the workforce itself, which funnels into your restaurant, is a challenge by itself in the sense like you're trying to find maybe the right person who can actually fit your brand depending upon your customer needs and depending upon your brand value and all those kind of things. um, so having said that, the biggest challenge is again we have seen anecdotal evidence where we have had clients where they've actually advertised, they've agreed to the positions, they've agreed everything, and come the D-Day where the person was supposed to come and join, lo behold, that person is nowhere to be found. And that's again another one would basically be like the person comes in after a couple of days, they stop coming in. It's either because they got like another work or they're not interested or they find the work to be too tiring or to be very physically demanding and all those kind of things. So given these things, you as a restaurant owner or a manager need to have the right strategy in the sense that like you need to find it, obviously from a recruiting point of view, from a training point of view, from a grooming perspective. You need to have a little bit of a set procedures, and whatever we're going to talk about in the next few slides, um, that might look corporate in nature, that might look more process oriented and all those kind of things, but we have seen good results when we actually have talked to the owners or the managers where they actually had a little bit of a process where they could find some level of a competence, some level of success when it comes to owners hiring staff and all those kind of things. Again, given the nature of the business, given the nature of the workforce, you are uh, we need to make sure you have a set process in order for you to hire and train the right staff. And we are going to talk about those, the process in the next few slides as well. So this is, if you look at from a very high level, you don't, again, we are talking from a mom and pop store perspective, from a few locations perspective. You actually have to have um, a set process for you to kind of go through these hiring process, training process, and maybe create a couple of manuals. And we're going to actually talk about like some descriptions, job roles, and all those kind of things for you to help or for you to kind of like think in terms of like how you can hire the right staff member. So again, the very first step is like you as a restaurant owner, you have to think about, okay, if this is my brand represents, let's assume you are a pizza place and you are geared towards families, where you actually have the whole family come in. So that means there will be a lot of kids who will be running around, who might basically create a lot of noise and all those kind of things. So at a very high level, whoever you're hiring who would be interacting with these customers needs to have a lot of patience, needs to be good with kids, needs to be good with mothers who actually might be asking a lot of questions. There might be kids who have dietary restrictions. So you'd be able to explain your menu to those people who have these dietary restrictions and so on and so forth. So that means like you need to think about all these things when you are trying to recruit the right person. So that means you need to think back and say, okay, what should your process look like from a recruitment perspective? Like, okay, if I'm hiring a manager, or if I'm hiring a chef, or if I'm hiring a front staff, or a server, or anyone else, you need to make sure that you have the right definitions or the right process write job descriptions, roles, responsibilities, and what exactly you're looking for that from that particular person, and so on and so forth. So that means having to do with just saying that I want to hire a person with a minimum wage of $10 plus tips, it would not cut it out, because people who are going to apply, they might just be looking at the $10 plus tips as the primary criteria. And those are the people who would actually quit right from day one or day two when they see that their personality does not match with what exactly the job requirements are. So, in total, you need to make sure that you actually have a recruitment process, a streamlined process that you can be defined, right? So that means you need to basically make sure that you have, like, for example, let's say you're trying again. We're talking both from a mom and pop store perspective, but also we're also talking from a multi-unit location or from a chain perspective as well. Depending upon like where you stand, you can create this process, and it is a pretty simple. Like, in the sense, all you have to do is like put it on a piece of paper, pen and paper, that you can actually repeat and rinse for future hiring purposes, and so on and so forth, right? So you need to make sure that you have a planning, and you are actually having something to do with, like, if you have a planned process in terms of job description, and then you say that this is my job description, this is the right candidate, which all channels I can actually approach, and then how, when we recruit this person, how are we going to train this person, how are we going to evaluate this person, and what are the benefits they're going to get, and how are we make sure that these people are delivering what they're expected to do, the evaluation process, and so on and so forth. So this is at a very high level. You can think of the overall recruitment process itself, that you as the owner, or you can actually have the management staff or the manager to kind of like sit with him or her, and kind of understand and put it on paper. Again, anything to do with process, we always say that you take a piece of paper and pen, and start writing it down, because that's when you can questions will be, you will ask more questions, or you'll actually trying to find more answers to some of the things that you might not have thought about. Again, as an example, if you're trying to find a person, so what should be the minimum wage, what should be their job description, how many hours are you expecting, what would be their training process, what would happen if they do not come on a specific day, what should be the backup process, and so on and so forth. All these kind of things that you will have to ask yourself, and then put it on a piece of paper, that would actually help you, not just for this particular day, but maybe 1 month down the road you are expanding to a new location, or your capacity has increased, so that means you want to hire another person of the same caliber. You can kind of look at this process and say, okay, I already have this process. All I have to do is follow the same process for me to hire the next John, or Kim, or someone who will basically be taking over, or joining your team, right? Again, in terms of the evaluation process itself, like, you need to actually have, if you have a job description saying that I would need a person, for example, let's assume you have to have someone in healthy conditions. You have like a two-level restaurant, so that means someone who can actually go up and down the stairs constantly, maybe for 5 6 hours. So that means they have to have a good physical stamina to do these kind of things. Maybe able to, if you are looking for someone, the front staff who can actually have to seat the customers, so that means they have to have a pleasing personality. They should be able to talk to the customers, and make them wait, and all those kind of things. So you need to make sure that you actually have the right screening process. You actually have in terms of like what exactly you're looking for, what are the minimum qualifications, and so on and so forth. So that is the standard evaluation process you need to actually have. So if you have this process at a very high level, saying that my recruitment process is, whenever I recruit someone, I need to define their roles, I need to define their requirements, I need to define their evaluation criteria, I need to define their interview process. I need to define their hiring process. I need to define their onboarding process, training process. So all these kind of things will actually, it need not be elaborate. Again, you can follow the same process for over and over again. And in the initial slides, we talked about, given the fact that you have a lot of attrition. So that means um, if any person who's going to join you, they are bound to leave very quickly. So if you have this process in place, the attrition rate will go down, and your ability to kind of replicate the process will be very, very easy, so that you can actually expand the team as well. So once you have defined the process, the very step is defining your requirements, right? In the sense that what exactly you're looking for, right? Are you looking for your kitchen staff? Are you looking for on the floor, or are you looking for some kind of management role, a manager or someone kind of a thing, right? So depending upon the type of restaurant staff that you are looking to hire, you have to come up with what we call as the requirements, right? In the sense that, like, okay, um, in the sense that, like, I am a particular brand. My brand goes like, it's, let's assume you're a fine dining restaurant, like you're a steakhouse. We actually have a client who's a fine dining steakhouse, right? So that means whenever they're hiring someone, they want to make sure that this person can talk a little bit about the wines they actually have. They can kind of try to upsell them on the desserts, or they can try to, like, interact with the customers and all those kind of things. So that means they cannot hire a student who might come for a couple of hours. So they want a person who has a little bit more experience. So that means I, as a restaurant brand, you need to make sure that who you want to hire, that actually goes well with your brand, and that actually goes well with what you're actually trying to sell, in this case. So if you're a quick serve, or if you're a fast food place where the level of interaction between the staff and the customer is very limited, but the requirement here has to be more in terms of agility, in terms of ability to turn around the orders very quickly. So that means that is the primary criteria for you as a restaurant owner. That should be your primary criteria: someone who's agile, someone who can actually turn around and quickly make decisions, or quickly make the orders for them to go, and all those kind of things, right? um, so once you actually have that one, then you actually go into your detailed job descriptions, right? You need to find out what position are you trying to hire for, what are their daily functions, how many hours of work are you expecting, right? Are there any personal or professional attributes that you are looking for, and so on and so forth. So you need to make sure, again, first you identify what kind of, like, staff you want depending upon your brand, and then once you have that in place, you are actually looking at what exactly is the job description of this person who you are trying to hire, right? It includes, like, professional capabilities as well as personal traits. What kind of, like, physical traits you're looking for? Are there any soft skills that you're looking for? And that's where you need to have a very detailed. It need not be a very detailed, because end of the day, you know your staff members, what you're looking for. So you have to have all these things on a piece of paper, and you need to make sure that you actually write the details in terms of, like, what exactly you're looking for, what kind of communication skills. Are you looking for a manager? That means team building skills, interactions with others, and so on and so forth. For example, we have, like, read somewhere where actually this person was very nice in front of the owners, but right behind their backs, they were, like, kind of, like, talking bad about them and trying to put others. The manager was, like, trying to put others down and all those kind of things. It created a toxic culture within the restaurant, and they have seen numbers go down, and that's where they did not know what the reason was, and ultimately they could figure it out. and they had to let go this manager, right? So you need to make sure that you have the right person. So for example, if you're looking for a job description, this is the template that you can actually use, saying that what are the responsibilities of this particular person you're hiring. So this is if you're hiring for a server, so that means the server should be able to take orders. They should be able to identify which order goes where. So that means they should have some kind of like ability to say that like this is for table number 5, table number 6, and so on and so forth, and ability to interact with the customers, make sure that they know what they're actually um, ordering, and at the same time maybe tell them about suggestions and all those kind of things. So if you look at it, it's not just like ability to take the orders, but also able to they should be dependable, like where they're actually handling cash, credit card, and all those kind of things. So that means you should make sure that this person is dependable and all those kind of things, um, in terms of from a trades perspective, right? So that means having an maybe 1 year, 2 years experience, or they should be trainable and all those kind of things. So you say that these are the responsibilities and these are the requirements for you, from a job description perspective. Or if you're like trying to hire another cook job, or like in the kitchen, you need to actually have what are the functions that they're going to do. Are they going to cut the vegetables? Are they going to do assist? Is it an assistant cook or the head cook? If it's a head cook, then they actually have to make sure and keep track of the inventory levels and the ability to maybe, depending upon your job description, should they be actually reordering? Should they be checking out like the quality of the products that they're actually getting from the vendors, and making sure that there is no pilferage and all those kind of things, right? So, if those are the job requirements or the responsibilities, then from a requirements perspective, you need to make sure that this person actually has worked in a similar capacity at another restaurant within the same cuisine. So you want to make sure that if you're a Mexican restaurant, you do not want a pizza maker to take over cooking your soups and entrees and all those kind of things, right? So you need to make sure that the requirements is that they have already worked in a similar cuisine or something where they've actually shown some results, and given the fact that they actually have to keep cooking and standing and all those kind of things, they need to be physically active, and they should be able to like coordinate different or different people within the kitchen staff, and making sure that it works as a symphony and all those kind of things, right? Um, Once you actually have these things, the job descriptions and what you're looking for, then you need to start working on how you would want to advertise this. And we're going to actually talk about the different channels in a little while, but you need to make sure that what exactly you're looking for. Like, if you're saying that, hey, I want to hire a cook, a chef, or something like that, then you need to make sure that there is a description on that particular advertisement. Why someone should join? What are the benefits that they're going to actually get? And in terms of like what is the process, and maybe you don't have to put everything on that particular advertisement, but at least which would actually say that like, okay, for example, like you want to actually say that, hey, I am actually gonna give a percentage of the revenue or the profits we're gonna make, depending upon how well we do, kind of a thing, right? Or if you're trying to get some kind of a rating or something like that, then you can actually say that, hey, if we get like a rating from the local agency or something like that, maybe I'll give you X percentage, because this will lead to increase in your revenues and all those kind of things. So having all these things on an advertisement will enable the right person to kind of apply for your job, in terms of making sure that, hey, this is something that I want to be, or I want to be associated with. Let's assume you're a rising brand. So that means you can actually focus on the fact that like you have been recognized as the local leader in terms of giving back to the community, in terms of treating their employees well, and all those kind of things. Now, once you have identified this advertisement, then you need to start looking at, okay, where all we need to promote these job postings, right? And we have actually seen quite a number of places where you can actually advertise, but also each of these ones actually have their own limitations. We've obviously, to start with, you need to make sure that you actually have a poster on your if you have a bulletin board or something, so that your internal team knows that there's an occupancy or the vacancy for that kind of a post, right? Making sure that you are using your website, your social media pages, um, and also, like for example, Facebook actually has a job postings right now. You can actually go on indeed.com, and there are other specific specialized positions or specialized channels where you can actually post. Another channel could be Craigslist. We have actually seen a little bit of traction from that one. And obviously there are a lot of Facebook groups where we have seen a traction as well, in terms of at least people applying for that post, right? Again, making sure that you have the right description, job description will enable the suitable candidate to kind of look at this maybe on a Facebook group. Is another one. We also actually reached out to the local workforce commission, where you can actually try to recruit people who are actually looking for a job, and so on and so forth. And making sure that, again, you need to make sure that the Facebook groups and Facebook job postings is a must, based on our this one. And one of the things you might also want to do is, in terms of your storyboards, right? You can actually create a storyboard or something like that, where you're saying that, hey, a day, how would, like for example, talking about current employees, or what a day would look like for a chef, or for a server, or for a manager, or something like that, that you can actually tag along with your job posting, so that way people can actually look at it and say, huh, this is how my life would be if I have to join your restaurant, right? So that is very, at least from our point of view, it is very crucial or critical, so that the prospective candidate can understand even before applying, and they can evaluate, saying that yes, this is something similar to what I'm doing or what I want to be. Let me go ahead and apply for it. And then obviously, at that point of time, the candidate, they themselves actually have a clarity in terms of why they're applying, so that they can kind of fine tune their job application. Again, bear in mind, when we are talking about all these things, it's smaller things, like saying that, hey, I've actually worked in a local Mexican taco place, and your restaurant is also the same thing, so that's why I'm applying. That itself will showcase that, right. um, then again, we talk about the other channels, right? There are a lot of, like, vocational programs like culinaryschools.org, where you can actually see a lot of, if you're specifically trying to hire for a chef or something like that, where you can actually go to that particular ones and try to hire interns or experienced chefs and all those kind of things as well. And there are other programs, like these are the sims, like um, Cincinnati Cooks, or these are some of the channels that you can refer to in order for you to hire their students. Again, these are all very location specific. So if you are in a location, you might want to search for vocational courses, or even it could be local community colleges, where you can actually advertise. Or another thing which we have actually noticed is high schools. Again, given the transient nature, because bear in mind, when we talk about high school kids, that means these are, you need to actually have accommodate for dropouts and all those kind of things, because of the class schedules and all those things as well. Um, and other things can be, these are few of the sites that we have actually looked. Servo is one, culinary agency is one, jobsonthemenu.com is another one. But again, we would actually maybe compile a list of other resources, and then we can actually post it in here as well, which includes your Facebook, your channels, your local work agency, your schools, your other places as well that you can actually look into, right? Again, Poached is another one, Restaurant Zone, and other job boards as well. And the most important thing is basically from a referrals point of view, we need to make sure that any if you're trying to hire someone, then they actually your staff members might actually have friends or family members who are working in the same field, and they might actually act as a good referrals. And again, depending upon the need, you can actually have a referral policy or a referral bonus in place, saying that if this particular person joins through you, through the referral, that particular person will get some XYZ dollars, provided they stay with you for 6 months or something like that, right? That's one thing, is hiring through referrals. Another thing is definitely which is basically making sure that you can actually hire internally as well. For example, you are trying to hire a manager rather than trying to go outside and hire a manager. Are there any candidates within your team who can be groomed to become the manager of the store, of the restaurant? That's another thing that you might actually want to look in. And another thing is obviously is the recruitment consultant. So we have actually seen a little bit of recruitment consultant when it comes to maybe a management staff or something for multi-unit locations, like a general manager or something like that. And definitely these are the channels where you are actually looking for a more professional help in terms of hiring for at a senior level staff and all those kind of things, right? But the agencies, because they are expensive, so that means the cost actually has to be justified in terms of hiring the staff. We talked about the in-house talent as well. Uh, so once you've actually identified the channels, and once you start getting the applications, you need to make sure that you are investing time in terms of making sure whether the candidates who are coming in are the right candidates or not. So that means you need to actually have either you as the owner or the manager, or maybe have a team of people who can actually review these applications and say that, okay, I need to have some references for me to begin an interview process. Again, depending upon the level at which you are trying to hire. If it is from a local school, you might want to talk to the teacher or their friends, or if it's a referral, obviously you want to make sure that excuse me, you want to make sure that that person is dependable and all those kind of things, right? If it is from, again, if it's from a local school or a local community college, take a look at their grades and take a look at their patterns in terms of if they're actually worked before and they've been quitting jobs like after 1 month. So that means these people are not going to stay for a longer time. So you want someone who's dependable, who can work with you for a longer duration of time, and so on and so forth. Once you have screened, make sure that you are trying to interview them. Again, the interview process is depending upon multiple things, right? Like, first of all, you need to identify what your brand is all about. You need to basically make sure that you know for which position, what are the requirements, what are the responsibilities of that particular position, what are the job requirements of that particular person, right? And then obviously you need to make sure that you actually have screened the application and know what exactly who the person you are actually interviewing, right? So that means you need to make sure all these things are done in a proper fashion. So that way, when people are trying to come for the interview, where they can actually see the seriousness in terms of you as a recruiter have spent quite a bit of time trying to know about this person, know about the particular position that you are trying to fill, and at the same time trying to marry these two components, right? So that you will actually be able to help showcase that you're very serious about this particular position and so on and so forth, right? Having said that, you need to make sure um, you have, and again from an interview perspective, you have to make sure that you have a little bit of in the sense like what should be the format of the interview. Is it just a Q&A, or do you want to have some kind of a role play or something like that, right? So that means you need to actually have all these scenarios, that if you are talking about the role play, or if you are talking about a question and answer, you need to come up with a list of all the questions that you want to ask. A what if scenario, what would happen, like for example, during COVID, as an example, most of the times where a mask is mandated by local governments, how would this particular manager or the server would deal of a customer who's not wearing a mask? Would you tell them to leave the restaurant, or would you provide them with a mask? What would happen in that case if this particular customer says that they don't want to wear a mask, and so on and so forth? So you can kind of like stimulate the conversation with these kind of questions, and there is no right or wrong answer, but it has to be very contextualized depending upon the kind of answers you're getting. You can understand whether this particular person is a fit for you or not, whether they have the temperament, whether they actually have the acumen in terms of responding to the situation, and so on and so forth. Again, as I said, like you can come up with some certain examples, like what happens if someone spills the water or the guest on the guest, like what would you do in those scenarios? So you need to kind of like come up with these sample questions so that they can understand and they can respond. And again, as I said, like depending upon this one and depending upon the experience that you actually have had, you can correlate whether this particular person is apt or not, right? Um, it's not just the ability for you to look at the right answers, but also the soft skills, or the body language, whether they're, again, we keep on referring the physical fitness of the particular person, given the restaurant industry is a very repetitive task, very high demanding from a physical stamina perspective. You need to make sure that these people fit well and they do not like throw fits when it comes to not able to handle pressure and all those kind of things. Like on a Friday evening, you don't want a key person to yell or something like that when there is too much pressure, where you get like 10 different orders from 10 different places, and you're trying to process all these orders in a timely fashion. Right. So once you've actually made sure that you identify the right person, then the next picture comes is basically making sure that they are trained well, right? When it comes to training, again, it goes back to the very job description that you actually have, in terms of saying that, okay, this is the job description of of the particular role, and this is what I'm actually looking for, and this is what they actually have to do, and these are the tools that are available for this particular employee to do, and so on and so forth, right? So you can kind of, again, depending upon the position, you can actually have some procedures that you might have already have come up with. Again, the reason why we keep on harping on this process is that once you identify the process, again, this particular, you don't actually have to be there in order for the second person to be trained. You can actually have this manual or something saying that these are the things that you are supposed to do, and from there, these someone else can do the training, and you can actually monitor it whether they're able to perform these tasks without any more hand holding and all those kind of things, right? So making sure that you actually have a manual is very critical. The manual need not be a very big book. All it has to do is, if you are a chef, for example, what you have to do is like come in the morning, make sure that the produce is already there. In case the produce is not there, call this particular person and then try to see what exactly has happened. If it is not there, escalate the issue and make sure that you have right produce. And then once the produce is there, you need to make sure that you are checking the quality of the produce and making sure that there are no issues. If there are any issues with the quality of the produce, again, call back the vendor and make sure that you have a replacement for that produce, right? And then you need to make sure that you are actually, as a chef, you need to make sure that you have someone who can cut this produce. So, as in, these are the logical steps that you would expect from the employee to execute, and these are the things that you need to have in the manual, so that tomorrow if someone says that, oh, I did not know that I was supposed to call the vendor if there's any issue with the produce, right? So you don't want someone to say that I actually went ahead and the quality of the produce was not good, but the person went ahead and kind of like cooked the dinner or lunch or something like that, which kind of led to a disaster, right? So that way you can go back and say, hey, look, like there's a clear procedure for you to look at the produce, the quality of the produce. They have to meet this bare minimum stuff and so on and so forth, right? And the same case, you need to actually have, if it is a front staff that you're trying to hire, you need to make sure that particular front staff has like a proper etiquette in terms of dressing, a proper etiquette in terms of addressing the customer who actually walks into the door, a proper standard procedures in terms of saying that they should be seated if there is any seat within the first 3 4 minutes, or if there's no seating available, they are supposed to be entered into the wait list, and then in terms of bare minimum information that you're asking for, and so on and so forth. So all these kind of things that you need to make sure that there are structured guidelines for each department and with each category of the job that they actually are supposed to fulfill. So in case if someone is not there, you can actually have a backup and they can actually look at these guidelines and fill that particular position for that particular day, kind of a thing, right? Um, Again, from a restaurant's perspective as well, right? You need to make sure that you can train the staff using interactive sessions, or you can actually have some role plays. Again, all this is part of your training, and you can make some videos of this particular interactive process that you can actually show at a later date, and so on and so forth, right? So making sure that you actually have the right training is very crucial, so that even at this stage of time, if a particular employee feels that they are not apt for it, they might want to drop off again, which should not have happened. But in cases if this has happened, when you're going through the training process, they might see that, okay, this is not my cup of tea. And you can also evaluate these candidates, saying that, okay, even though we thought the interview process went well, when it actually comes to the practicality of these candidates, you are having issues, and you can at that point of time still let them go than putting a candidate who's not fit to be in that particular, and it's more like a force fitting a candidate who's not fit to kind of go into that particular role. Now, um, again, having said this one, once you have the right candidate, it's imperative that you are trying to make sure that you retain them. So it is very crucial, because you want to make sure that you're grooming them, you're listening to them, you're making sure that they're growing with you, and the customer retention, given the sorry, employee retention is a key facet for you to grow, given the fact that again, as we have quoted early on, there is too much attrition. You don't want to go through this entire process of hiring someone, posting the job, hiring someone, training them, and they're leaving within a week because you have spent quite a bit of time and resources on hiring this staff member. Not just resources, but also it's not good for the employee morale as well. So you need to make sure that the churn has to be reduced as much as possible with all these steps, so that way you are not going through this recruitment process day in and day out, which does not look good, right? So that means making sure that it is the culture is very It's very again, given the high pressure nature of the job, where everyone is dependent on someone, like the front staff is dependent on the servers are dependent on the back staff is again dependent on the vendor relations and the management team and all those kind of things. It's like a multiple moving parts when it comes to the team members, and making sure that every team member is doing their job repetitively, on an synchronous mode. So think of it as if a symphony that has to be carried out at every single day of your restaurant life. So that means having the right kind of people is very important. You don't want someone to kind of like start fighting or bitching about each other, saying that I'm doing my job, but the other person is not doing. So you need to have some kind of clarity in terms of what exactly you want and so on and so forth, right? You need to make sure that it is a professional workforce. That means you need to basically manage the boundaries. You need to make sure that there is a development, there is a performance appraisal, there is like a monetary value, there is a sense of satisfaction. For example, if you have seen in Dallas right now, there is a snowstorm. There are a lot of instances where some of the restaurant owners and the staff went beyond and made sure that a lot of customers are taken care of. Like we actually have a client who basically donated more than 100 plus lunch boxes to a local school, which they did not have to do it, but they have actually done it, so that it is dependent on these um, employees who have actually done this job. They came to the store even though there was like hazardous and all those kind of things, but they wanted to do it. And all these students actually have repaid these employees with a gratitude which you would never get in any other field, because these are, if you can think of it as, these are the frontline workers who are kind of like helping the people in need at this point of juncture, right? So you can also try to foster development, saying that Employee of the Month award and giving them some recognition. And again, end of the day, you need to make sure that the customers are also feel that they have to thank the employees. It's not just it has to be reciprocal, right? The employees have to be respectful and thankful to the customers, and the customers also have to feel the same way towards the employees. And that would only come from you as a general manager or the owner of the place, saying that, hey, these are our valued people who make it possible for us to cook day in and day out, and make sure that you as a customer leaves the restaurant satisfied. And that's where you need to make sure that they feel valued, that the value not comes just from you as an employee or as an owner, but also from the customer as well, and making sure that you are like putting the name of these employees right on your social media, right? As a team, maybe take them out for lunch or dinner or something like that on a regular basis. Make sure that the tips are calculated and distributed at the end of the month. Sorry, at the end of the day, and make sure that everyone gets their due share and all those kind of things, right? The compensation is definitely an important role, because end of the day, that's what is important from an overall employee perspective, and making sure that when it comes to the tips and all those kind of things, that they are actually having shared, and if there's an overtime policy, and if there's something, an hazardous pay or something like that, and making sure that all these things are legal, in the sense that you need to make sure that there is a legal definitions, because what if someone actually has some kind of an accident or something? What happens then? Who covers the pay for that at that point of time, right? Do you have the right insurance to take care of these things, right? All these kind of things you need to make sure that it is very, very clear in your manual, so that there is no ambiguity and all those kind of things. So in total, if you look at it, right, given the fact that the employees by definition are very, very crucial for you to make sure, given the fact that like restaurants are a lot of customer facing people oriented business, you need to make sure that you have the right talent in terms of right staff members, in terms of right from the front staff to servers to in the kitchen to the management and everywhere, so that all these units or all these departments can function as one team, so that your customers, when they come to the store or when they come to the restaurant, they are actually interacting with one particular brand and not with different even though they are interacting with different team members, but they should have the same level of courtesy or same level of customer satisfaction. Just imagine if a head chef comes out and talks to a couple of people and asks, "Hey, how was dinner today?" or something like that. So that shows the level of courtesy that your chef is showing to your customers, and the same thing can come from a general manager or something like that. So in total, right, like given the transient nature, given the business is so focused or so dependent on people, you need to make sure that you have the right tools in terms of hiring the right staff and making sure that you are assessing them in the right fashion, and making sure that you are training them, and making sure that you are grooming them and kind of helping them grow with your brand. So this particular process, whatever we have defined, it needs to be followed right from mom and pop stores all the way to multi-unit chain. It does not matter, because end of the day, when you're trying to hire a person, you need to make sure that you have the right staff and all those kind of things. So that actually covers the entire process of recruitment and how to hire the right person and so on and so forth. If you have any questions, feel free to post it here, or you can also send an email at marketing@mconnect.com. And if you have any questions about our mconnect platform, or if you want to talk more about our frequent, which is our loyalty program, you can also send an email at marketing@mconnect.com, that we can schedule a demo and we can show how we as a company can help you grow, and engage your customers. Um, and again, in the month of March, we will be coming up with our webinar, and you can go to mconnect.com to register for our upcoming webinar as well. Um, and stay safe out there. Hopefully, again, we will be posting this particular webinar in our YouTube channel. You can actually download it, or you can view this one, and you can also share it with your friends and family. Thanks again for joining our monthly webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in March.